Hi everyone, today I'll be talking about the audiobook How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Now, this book is based on psychedelic drugs, which are highly illegal in the US as well as other parts of the world. So I just want to start this video by saying I am not promoting any kind of drug use. This video is simply a review of the book and some things I've learned from the book itself. Now, a little bit about Michael Pollan. He has been writing for 30 years and his primary focus is around where culture intersects with nature. He is currently a professor at Harvard University. He has multiple bestsellers and he's received multiple awards. So he's a very well-seasoned author. If you don't know anything about psychedelics, here's a couple things. First, psychedelics alter a person's consciousness in a significant way. Unlike other drugs like cannabis, alcohol, or any other upper and downer, they just work in a completely different way. Now, some common psychedelics include LSD, psilocybin mushrooms, dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, and that's just to name a few. Psychedelics also have a very deep history in the US, the rest of the world, and the ancient world like the Egyptians. Unfortunately, we don't know much about them because there's not much research done on them because they are Schedule I drugs in the United States, meaning they're highly illegal and research on them is very, very, very limited. But there is a psychedelic renaissance of sorts that has been emerging in the past decade that makes the future of these substances seem bright. Pollan narrates his own book and he does a fantastic job of it. This is important because a lot of this book is about Pollan's psychedelic experiences, and since he's reading it, you get a more detailed and a more genuine account of the experiences itself than you would if you're just reading the book or another narrator is reading it to you. Now, this book begins with the history of psychedelics dating back to the ancient civilizations that used natural psychedelic substances to alter their consciousness. Then Pollan moves towards the accidental creation of LSD by Albert Hofmann. He also talks about influential figures like Bob Jesse, Al Hubbard, and Timothy Leary, and he goes into detail about the rapid changing culture and social stigma around psychedelics since the 1950s. He goes into the past, present, and future research that needs to be done and has been done to further understand these substances because we know so little about them. Also, he talks about how the government is restricting this in a lot of ways because of the scheduling of the drugs. Pollan goes pretty deep into the history of the psychedelics before he talks about his own personal experiences. He does this for a good reason. He wants to get as much information as he can about what these substances are, how they could potentially affect him, so he's reluctant to take them because there are dangers if you don't take them in the right setting. When he does get to his experiences, he doesn't really leave anything out. He talks about who he's with, what the experience is like, what it's like before, during, and after, and how it's changed him. I think that Pollan is almost a perfect person to research and write this book because one, he's an experienced author, and two, he had little to no influence on the psychedelic field and culture before he wrote this book, and he didn't really know anything about them before he wrote this book. He doesn't really have any biases going into it, which is really key because the conversation around psychedelics is based on a lot of biases. There are some people who think it's humanity's savior, while some people think it destroys people's minds. And with limited research, it's hard to form objective truths about these substances when we only have these biased opinions. And Pollan also says he's not a very spiritual person. He didn't think about his own consciousness consciously like meditators do before he started researching and before he had his experiences. So this can show the sheer amount of change that psychedelics can have on a person. There are many ideas and concepts in this book that are captivating as well as useful. Now, here are a couple of my favorites. Now, one of these ideas is that there are many consciousnesses, and the normal one we perceive is just one of those. And Pollan and others in his book suggest that the ego is a primary determinant of how we perceive the world. Now, the ego is great for certain things like survival, but it also is like a permanent security guard that's always there watching our minds and keeps us away from certain things like deep emotions. Now, if we want to access a larger bandwidth of consciousness, we have to let go of the ego. The ego is useful in many ways, but it's a lot better in the passenger seat than the driver's seat. A primary focus of a lot of meditators is to achieve temporary ego dissolution. Now, ego dissolution is where you break the boundaries that separate you from the rest of the world. You feel more connected with everything, the whole world, and you see that nature is a part of you instead of being a separate entity. Now, I can tell you from firsthand experience that this is very difficult to do. I've been meditating for about 1.5 years, and I've just scratched the surface of this. But some people in Pollan's book suggest that psychedelics can induce this state almost instantaneously. Pollan says that one of, if not the most impactful message he's gotten from his DMT experience would be that he's extremely grateful for anything existing at all. Not just himself being alive, but just anything existing in the first place. Now, I personally love this. I'm a huge believer in the power of gratitude. Even before I started reading this book, I wake up every single day and say 3 things I'm grateful for. It could be a loving family and friends, or it could be something like clean water. So many people in this world don't have that. I feel like so many of us get caught up with what we don't have and what others have, and we look on social media and see, oh, this person's got this person's got that, but we never look at our own lives and see so many things that we have that other people don't have. We feel more envy and jealousy instead of appreciation and gratitude. I think that practicing this conscious gratitude it automatically makes your day a lot better. There are 47,000 suicides in the US every single year. This has been increasing for a long time, and this is more than auto accidents. That's crazy to me. We have a huge mental illness problem in this country, and the #1 treatment for this is mind-numbing drugs. This is just a band-aid to a deep-rooted problem, and in the long run, all it does is just add a substance addiction to depression. Now, there has to be a paradigm shift in how we address mental illness in this country, or it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Pollan suggests that psychedelics might have the potential to positively impact depressed people. He actually has a whole section in his book where depressed people have been tested on and given psychedelics, and they find meaning in their life, and they have this experience that gets them out of it. Not permanently, but they are better for a time. Now, with such little research done on this, it's hard to say exactly why this happens or how to improve it or how to actually utilize it. But unfortunately, because of the Schedule 1 status, research really can't be done on these substances. The final idea I'll talk about is humans are habitual animals. You've probably heard this before, but what does it mean? We form these algorithms that are created by our surroundings and our everyday experience, and these algorithms help us repeat tasks efficiently without much thought put into them. But the usefulness of the human mind can also be a prison to it. Now, once we form these algorithms, it's hard to break out of them. And Pollan suggests that psychedelics might have the power to help rewire our brain, and research has shown that this may be the case. Now, Pollan, I don't remember exactly who it was, but he was quoting a psychedelic researcher, and this researcher said that, imagine your mind is a snowy mountaintop, and thoughts and actions and everyday experience are sleds that go down these mountains ever since we're born. And as these sleds go down, they form these deep grooves that no matter what path you try to take, you're always going to end up in these grooves. And you feel that you're just repeating and repeating and repeating and not changing. That's why people say that you can't teach an old dog tricks, because as the older you get, the harder it is to change your mind. But this researcher said that, imagine that psychedelics are like fresh snow, so you can rework those grooves and reform them. If you're a person who has a lot of bad habits and it seems like it's impossible to break them, like smoking, compulsive eating, not getting your work done, not exercising, no matter how much you try, it seems like it's just impossible and you always fall back into these patterns. This book might give you insight on exactly how our habits and how our minds work, and why it seems like it's impossible, and it might give you an idea of what you need to do to possibly get on a path to stop and break these bad habits. Now, if you're a person who doesn't think about their own consciousness or existence very often, this is a great book for an introduction into that, because Pollan was the same way. He himself says that he didn't think about those things until he did his research and had his experiences and started meditating. And he says he changed a lot after that. So this book's really good if you want to get into that. Also, if you're just curious about psychedelics, this is also a great book because it basically covers everything there is to know about them. Speaking about being curious and learning new things, I've just recently started listening to audiobooks and I love them. I really think that they're the future of long-form learning. I understand why so many people can't read normal books throughout the day because they just have these busy schedules with work, school, whatever they're doing. And it just feels like you want some entertainment at the end of the day. You don't want to put in the extra work to read. I completely get that. But with audiobooks, there's kind of a loophole to that. When you're getting ready in the morning, when you're at the gym, anytime you're commuting, anytime you're not using your brain actively, you can be listening to audiobooks. And they're range from like 8 to 12 hours, some less, some more. And if you add up all those times you're not doing anything throughout the day, you can finish a book in a week. A lot of CEOs say that that's what they do. So I recently started this habit, and I started it by using Audible. Now with Audible, you can get 2 free books and a month membership using the link below. And if you don't want to pay any money after a month, you can just cancel it and keep your books. So you can listen to this book I reviewed, or Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, my other review. So yeah, there's really no reason to not get them. Thanks for sticking to the end of the video, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.